the makeup has so much to do in this movie with how effective the film is and how one character and, it just helps to characterize each of the performers, I think.
I got to give you credit. It's a smaller film, but you did one of the best exploding heads I've ever seen.
The brilliance is in the original, and everyone else can do a good spin-off of it,
Right.
because we love it. But the design is already etched in.
Going to focus a little more behind the camera this time than we have usually as we talk about frightful makeup. This should be fun. Welcome. This is the Fright Club podcast, and she is Hope Madden.
He's George Wolf.
And we're from madwolf.com, and we had a lot of fun. Well, the last podcast was a Fright Club Live.
It was.
That we love doing at Gateway Film Center. And I had fun with sound effects in the last podcast, putting in the sound of those crickets.
Yeah.
But the response to the movie Hagazusa was not exactly enthusiastic.
It was not. It was tepid at best. But I think there are some people who came around, like they needed to digest it. And then there were other people who just were kind not to leave. So thank you, and please come back next month because we have more of a crowd pleaser. We'll talk about that in a second. We did have a couple of people, our friends Seth and Michael, they both loved it outright. And our topic was drug use.
Right.
And we mentioned this because really Hagazusa has 2 or 3 clear topics that I wanted to use, except that they would have been spoilers,
Sure.
and so few people have seen that movie.
Exactly.
So we went with drug use, and there were some, of course, that we forgot, as we always do. And our friend Corey pointed out a couple he would have mentioned. Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, where Freddy has syringe fingers. That should have had a mention. He also would have talked about Friday the 13th Part 3. That's obscure. That's specific. The older couple who's on drugs. But Corey would have pulled that out because he knows slashers backwards and forwards.
Yeah, I mean, as you may know, I am not the biggest fan of slashers, so when I do get a vote, which is seldom, I probably would not have voted. Although I do agree the syringe fingers, that's a cool visual.
Yes.
I'll give him that.
That's a good one. And then Maddie pointed out Shrooms, which is a terrible movie, but she says kind of a guilty pleasure movie. But of course, Seth really caught
Always.
us. I'm starting to think that I should consult with Seth before I finalize my list.
And I know that takes a lot for you to admit that. It really does.
It does.
But
I don't do very many things well. So the one thing that I do well, I like to really cling to. But
he's proved himself. He always has one.
Yes. Well, this time it's 2. Well, one is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which clearly that's really kind of kicked it all off, right? If we're going to go back, that would be one. But the one that I cannot believe I forgot, Fried Berry.
Fried Berry.
How did I forget? You know what? They follow us on Twitter.
I know. And number one, it's not that old.
No.
And we loved it. And
the whole movie is about
just
being
a
fried.
drug-fueled nightmare. Yeah.
So I don't know how I missed Fried Berry, but my apologies to everyone.
I would have voted for that one
Yeah,
too. Apologies to Fried Berry.
And then Dustin, our friend Dustin, who moved out to L.A., and we miss him, he just wanted to point out that he liked the list, but Bliss, which we talked about Bliss, but it didn't make the final 5, and it absolutely would have been in his final 5.
Yeah, well, Bliss has a lot of fans.
Yeah, it does.
We liked it. We didn't love it.
No, I was a little underwhelmed because I felt like I've seen this movie before, just not maybe done quite this well. So
yeah, but I know it has a lot of fans. So
yeah.
So point well taken. Thank you, Dustin. So that was an interesting time.
Yeah, I think that was maybe the most disappointed. And it's funny because we had 2 back-to-back because we showed The Fan last time, Der Fan, the German movie Der Fan, and it was polarized. A lot of people really liked it, but there were a couple people, yourself included, hated it.
Well, that soundtrack, I just couldn't get away from that.
And then to follow it up with Hagazusa, which was so... Anyway, so we've had a couple of misses the last
But
few months.
The interesting is, over the 9 years, there have been movies that I thought, this is going to go over, like it's going to die, that have come off really well. So I'm a little surprised. I really like Hagazusa.
Yeah, I do too.
I think
love
it's
it.
well
And
done,
it's beautiful. I think everybody at least admitted that. If you're going to watch it, you should watch it on a big screen because it is a gorgeous film. But anyway,
agreed.
So next month, it's a crowd pleaser.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, there's 3 back-to-back that I think people will like.
Okay, so you're trying to get back in the good graces.
I am. I'm trying. Come back. Even if you hated the last 2 months.
Consult with Seth
Come
first.
back.
So thank you for all that. Thank you for all the feedback, as always. As we're moving on, we have a great special guest. I think we've been trying to schedule him on here for a while.
Yeah, like a year.
Yeah. So because we got the good fortune to work with him on our movie, Obstacle Corps, and we were so lucky and learned so much. Please welcome David Greathouse.
Yay!
Hey.
AKA House. That's how we're going to refer to you from the rest of the show.
I like it. Sure.
We're glad to have you on here because actually we're based in Columbus, Ohio, for people that don't know, and you're really not far.
Yeah, Mansfield area, hour some north.
You've got your madhouse of horrors going on there when you work on all your creature feature effects.
Yeah, well, we have we got Halloween business, and then the movie stuff is pretty much me. But I didn't expect to be here as long as I did, and I sort of got caught up in the vortex of Ohio. I moved to Los Angeles in the '90s. I lived out there for 8 years, and came back to make a documentary film back in my hometown of Cleveland. And I couldn't leave. There was just like other projects and people and events that was off the beaten path of what I was doing in Los Angeles, which was special effects 24/7. And then I wound up, shooting videos and editing and acting and getting back in the haunted house business. And just, it was like, and then, touring with Mushroom Head and then, Robert Kurtzman. So all of these like weird opportunities like kept me in Ohio. And I haven't, and it's like,
well, good.
Wow, here we are.
Yeah, it worked out for
us because you got to help us out so big time on the Obstacle Corps with some fantastic effects.
It was incredible. But I mean, for people who aren't familiar, your career has really, run the gamut. So you've done Yorgos Lanthimos movies, and you did Kevin Smith movies, and you also do a lot of Ohio-based films, and you act and do makeup effects for things like Clowntown, and you just do all kinds of all over the place. You do, I don't want to say charity work, but you're kind enough to bring Yorgos Lanthimos level of this guy is such a professional work to really small homegrown films like ours.
Yeah, obviously because I'm an independent filmmaker myself, I understand and appreciate, and and it's all the same. The rates may vary, but the work, sometimes it's more creative. Most of the times it is more creative to work on a more independent project. So I learned something as well about filmmaking, beyond just being guy for hire. And I like it all, the acting part and if there's any aspect of filmmaking, any aspect, I'm interested in it versus I'm a makeup artist or I'm a special effects artist or, I like it all. So as much as I can get my hands in any part of the process, I'm game. And I love killing people on screen too. You hire me, kill people, I am there.
Yeah, and you mentioned some of the directors, but the films that we're talking about, you were involved with the incredible effects on Tusk.
Yeah.
The effects of Killing of a Sacred Deer, and also I got to give you credit. It's a smaller film, but you did one of the best exploding heads I've ever seen in Escape from Death Block 13. I love that exploding head.
Oh, right on. Yeah. Director Gary Jones.
Yep.
And, that was something, because I was a part of it, I kind of helped write it into the script almost, no, let's do the exploding head. Let's go for it. Because any chance to kill myself is even.
Well,
I have this down the hallway, by the way. I'll save that for later.
Nice.
Well, when we were prepping Obstacle Corps, our art director Molly Haynes and I went to Crestline and we toured your facility and we looked at all
jealous.
of your cool monsters and everything. And I just want to point out how this was my first feature film, as you both know, and it was Molly's first feature film, and how incredibly what a lovely, amazing educational experience it was to work with you, and what a phenomenal mentor you were. And I say that for myself because it was great. You and I went through the script page by page and talked about, well, how should this person's death look? It was great. And you asked me, what are my favorite horror films? And so we have a couple of deaths that were sort of specifically sort of homages to my favorite horror films. And then you worked hand in hand with Molly in our art department to create all of those things and teach them how to create all those things, how to create the weapons and how to make everything work. And you just made everybody feel so it was my movie, so clearly I felt a part of it, but I didn't know what I was doing, and you helped me learn to to know what I was doing. You were such a great mentor to all of us, and every single person on the set loved you so much. You were everybody's favorite. You and Tyrone Russell, who was our scriptie. You were the two favorite people in the entire crew.
It's very sweet. It starts from the top, and obviously you guys, I just connected with you, and obviously if we didn't jive, it probably wouldn't have been the same, but we're kind of kindred spirits, and I think that helped us all together is believe in each other. I see a lot of directors independent. I don't believe in. This was never the case.
Oh,
so there's kindred. Like this is my tribe. The rock and roll connections, the movie obsessions. It's like, yes, we're in good hands.
And then when I got pulled into the cast, I was lucky enough to be a part of
the best kill.
I think so.
Yeah,
I like to think it's the best kill.
That's right.
And we'll leave it at that. All right. Well, we've got a list of we've got 5 films that really spotlight the work of some great makeup artists, and then underneath those 5, we'll talk about the other work that the artist has done.
Or at least just list it out. But I wanted to talk about, and there's going to be one that's a clear omission, but it's kind of because there were 2 different werewolf movies, and one of them is maybe my favorite werewolf movie, but the makeup in the one that we talk about instead, we get to see more of it. The character sort of transformations, they're sort of partial transform, partial not, all throughout the whole movie. So that's why we went with that one. Anyway.
All right, well, good enough. So,
but I did run the list. I did this time. I ran the list past House first to see, does this look okay to you? And he was good with it.
So. Good. That's good. So we've got some fine examples here of some fantastic makeup work. So we'll dive in to number 5, and boy, this is an all-timer. This is from 1981. Some of the best werewolf effects ever. It's The Howling.
I saw you die.
You said on the phone that you wanted to get to know me. Well, here I am, Karen. Look at me. I want to give you a piece of my mind.
So this is the one where originally I had An American Werewolf in London here, which is a magnificent movie. Won the Oscar. Clearly is something that needs to be recognized. The only reason that I went with The Howling instead, as I said, is because you get to see these werewolves kind of half change. It creates individual characters. That's what I felt like even the first time I watched the movie, is that the makeup effects help you recognize one character from the next. They become part of the performance, I think.
Well, and what's interesting about that is because Rick Baker, effects master Rick Baker, left this movie to do American Werewolf in London, leaving it in the hands of Rob Bottin.
Yeah. So, and you were cool with this decision. Tell us what you think about this film.
Well, there's a great rivalry with the effects guys on what is better, American Werewolf or The Howling.
I bet.
Actually, people in general, horror movie fans in general. Now there's the effects guys, which is like a microcosm of that. It's a question that, I'm literally was asked the other day, not related to this topic of the, like other people are still wanting to debate this. And, it's all these years later. The Howling is awesome for many reasons. And Rob Bottin he was 21 years old.
Yeah. Wow. It's amazing.
And he was doing this in his garage. Okay. He did not have a shop. He was Rick Baker's apprentice. He had done Piranha for Joe Dante.
Right.
Basically the gore gags, and I think not so much of the fish, and Humanoids from the Deep. So he was 19, 20 years old making this stuff. So he was hanging out with Rick as a 14, 15-year-old kid and with the master of makeup effects. And Rick was signed to do this. He stepped out because American Werewolf came in, a film that he had been promised on, a bigger budget film, and something he had worked with John Landis before. So Rob took control and really, there's a little bit of, there was a cross education going on between those two guys, but, they linger and it's spookier. The movie is spookier. And I like American Werewolf more as a movie. It's just like a perfectly fun film, but there's something sinister and creepy about The Howling and the werewolves and the Eddie Quist transformation.
Yes.
It's hard. That's hard to top. So it's an apples oranges discussion with those two films. but they're both brilliant.
They
and
are.
I still talk about them today.
Yeah, I think really as time has gone on, at least for me, the Eddie Quist scene has just really gotten more and more legendary.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I agree with you on American Werewolf in London. I love it, but man, you go back to that Eddie Quist scene, and it is so creepy and so well done. And it's close up on his face.
Yeah.
Yeah, really, really, really creepy. And this actually won. It won the 1981 Saturn Award for Best Horror Film.
Wow. It is a great movie. And we got to see a beautiful restoration of it at Nightmares last time.
Yes.
So, and I think that American Werewolf seems like it was immediately and rightly so a classic. I don't think there was ever any discussion or it was, and I think Howling took a longer time to have more mainstream appreciation. And I do like the reason, as I said earlier, the reason that it got the edge here, not because I do think American Werewolf is a better film, but the makeup has so much to do in this movie with how effective the film is and how one character and it just helps to characterize each of the performers, I think.
Mm-hmm. I still have to say, at the very end, she still looks a little like a poodle.
Yeah, she doesn't, or a Pomeranian maybe.
A Pomeranian.
Yeah.
That's when the laugh comes in. It's kind of, it's aw, look how cute.
But in a way that kind of works because people that are watching don't believe it.
Right.
She's hoping to get a reaction of the audience, and she doesn't get it.
No.
And let's talk about the other. I mean, talk about credits of Rob Bottin. You've got a bunch of others under here that he's done.
Oh, yeah. So he did The Thing, The Fog, Twilight Zone, the movie, Legend. He got an Oscar nomination for Legend, which is not a great movie, but man.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. The Tim Curry in that movie, that is some of the greatest makeup effects ever. That is such a great character right there. Witches of Eastwick and also Seven.
Yeah, that's a good list.
It is a good list. And that doesn't even count the couple we already talked about, Piranha and Humanoids from the Deep.
Right.
He won the Oscar for Total Recall.
Total Recall, sure.
Yeah.
At the time, those were some crazy effects too.
Yes.
With his face coming apart and things like that. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So legendary body of work. All right, moving up to number 4, and this is kind of a double score.
It is
2 and 1, but it's understandable because we go with Bob Keene's original Hellraiser in 1987, and then Josh Russell for the 2022 remake. Both Hellraisers.
We'll tear your soul apart.
There is so much more the body can be made to feel. And you'll feel it all before we're through.
My favorite thing about the new Hellraiser was the look of the new Cenobites, partly because I thought, well, you can't outdo the original.
Mm-hmm.
You just cannot. But I loved the design of them. I loved how their flesh became their costumes.
Mm-hmm.
I loved the way they looked. But the original Cenobites, and not just in Hellraiser, but in the sequel Hellraiser, some of the sequel Cenobites were better than the original Cenobites. What a masterful idea, to be able to just like read that short story and then come up with this incredible look of the priest with the pins. There are so many. There's like, there's that one. There's the one where like their faces split apart. I mean, all of them are so great, but Pinhead is just almost Frankenstein level perfection.
Oh, it's iconic.
What an
iconic
image. And I just think, what did you think, House? What did you think of the new one versus the old one? How did you think that they did they keep up? Did they not?
I enjoy the new one. Fine. Good job. All right. But the language has already been written.
Yeah.
Okay? And that is the first Hellraiser. So I think as much as I love all the sequels, and including the not all of the sequels, I take that back.
Of course.
The 2 sequels and then the remake. The brilliance is in the original, and everyone else can do a good spin-off of it.
Right.
Myself, 1,000 of other guys will do an honorable spin-off because we love it. But the design is already etched in, and that owes it to the original and Bob Keane.
Yeah.
And that changed makeup effects, costume design, cosplay, haunted houses, future films.
Sure.
The style, the aesthetic, sadomasochists from hell, from beyond the grave, from outer space, wherever they are from.
Right.
The original, brilliant. The sequels, honorable, but going to have to just stick with Bob Keane
Yeah.
on this one because he wrote that language. Clive Barker ultimately did.
Oh,
I have
yeah.
his art books, his designs. We talk about him as a writer, but his painting and his design of characters is. I challenge anyone in the 20th century to come close to him of character designs.
Yeah.
In his written word, just the way aliens and monsters look.
Mm-hmm.
He has a style unlike any other artist. The only one comparable would be Giger.
Right.
Yeah.
I consider him as an artist up there with the greats. That's how I feel about Clive Barker.
And it's a funny thing because, it's kind of a weird comparison, but children's book writers, picture book writers, the people who do the writing and illustration together, they understand that they're two completely separate ways to create one story, right? And so your words don't have to carry as much weight because all they have to do is tell you something that the image doesn't, and vice versa. And I think that that's what Clive Barker does, is that throughout Hellraiser, we didn't have to have exposition to explain to us what the Cenobites were or who they were or what they were doing because he had crafted an image with them that explained in a better way anything words could have done.
Yeah. And much like we've talked about many times with The Ring, when you have that build-up to the video in The Ring, it had to deliver once we saw the video. It did.
Yeah.
In this, those Cenobites had the look.
Yeah.
Had to deliver when we said, and my God, did they.
Because if you think about it, the story before you're introduced to the Cenobites of this guy who has no flesh and his girlfriend is luring back people so that he can start, that's gross. That's horrifying enough. And you almost, once you're introduced to Pinhead and his crew, you almost forget about that because you're like, oh my God, look at them. Yeah, they're glorious.
And then, of course, the manner, that Pinhead was just so, almost like a restrained manner that Hannibal Lecter had. His look was one way, but then he was just so measured in his speech, and that made it more menacing.
It did. I have to say the performances in the reboot were, those were big shoes to fill, and I thought that was actually a really, especially the priest, a really great transition from one era to the next.
And also, although it's not quite the same as what we're talking about, I also loved the development of the puzzle box in the new one. We went deeper into its architecture and the things that it do. I really enjoyed that too. But
I want to throw out, Bob Keane also did Dog Soldiers, which is another, we're just going to keep going back to werewolf movies. Well, I suppose that makes sense given the topic, but Dog Soldiers is such a great movie. And Candyman, the original Candyman. Glorious.
And Nightbreed filled with monsters.
Oh my God, yeah. And Life Force, which was, mainly you remember it for the nudity, but still, it had some good looking makeup effects.
Yes, it did.
And then Josh Russell for the new one, he also has done The Ritual recently and The Night House.
Yeah, all
like
the same.
Both of those.
Yeah, same director. Yeah, the same director as the new Hellraiser. So they make a nice team.
They do make a nice team. So that's good stuff. Anytime, I love the Hellraiser. Well, not the entire franchise.
No,
I love
nobody,
the original.
Nobody loves the entire franchise.
And I really liked. We both really like this new one as well. So good on both of them, Bob Keane and Josh Russell for Hellraiser, the original and the reboot. So that's our combined number 4. And moving it up to number 3, this is from 2006, and this makeup deservedly won the Oscar that year for Pan's Labyrinth.
In misery, there can be beauty. In death, there can be life. Pan's Labyrinth.
Oscar winner David Marty, the makeup effects artist here, and this one has an iconic visual. All you got to do anymore is show a picture of the Pale Man.
Oh my
with
God,
the eyes, and it conjures up so many feelings.
Yeah, and he's done. Marty has done a lot of Guillermo del Toro's films. Yeah. So, and it's another one where it's like the artistry just blends perfectly because del Toro's imagination is so magical. It's so full of wonder. And it's such a great balance between like sort of terrifying macabre and just childlike magical wonder. And I feel like that's what, especially Pan's Labyrinth, that's what the makeup effects capture. That's what these creatures capture, because some, and I know that there was a lot of digital effects too, especially with the stick bug and things like that. But I do think that if you look across their whole sort of body of work together, because he also did Devil's Backbone and Hellboy. Well, that's not Del Toro,
right?
But the second Hellboy, those three together. But yeah, he did The Skin I Live In. That is amazing.
Oh, yeah.
And in a very different way. There are no creatures in that, but the makeup effects, the movie is so exceptional. And then Dagon, which is not one of my favorites, but good looking monsters. So he's got a tremendous catalog of work. But I think that for me, I mean, Pan's Labyrinth is in every way next to perfect. It's almost an absolutely perfect film. And I don't think that it could possibly have achieved that if you didn't believe the creatures that she finds, that the little girl finds.
Sure. Absolutely agree. Everything you just said. The company that David runs with I believe his wife is DDT, and there's something always magical, and this goes for Bob Keane as well. There's sort of a Hollywood way of making a monster. And then when we see something from Japan or England or Spain, it has a different look to it. It does.
Yeah.
And that's what's great, is seeing other people's visions from across the pond, across the world, versus what we imagine as Americans is what the monster will look like. I say a lot of this genius of these creature designs, again, similar to Clive Barker, it goes back to Guillermo del Toro.
Mm-hmm.
He is the designer. He's the artist. And I have his books, and they are filled with these magical drawings, similar to another one would be Tim Burton. So guys are illustrators, Ridley Scott, guys that can design, Jim Cameron, that already know creatures and designs, and then they're the writer director. How good is that? You're not just like accepting what someone sends you. You're a mad genius.
Yeah.
A mad genius.
Yeah.
And those creatures came from his mind. Now, obviously, they were pulled up to perfection.
Right.
But in some ways, Guillermo is the makeup artist in many ways. He's not sculpting the clay. Or he sometimes does. He'll come in and butcher someone's work, just like slice the face off or something. But he works with incredible people. All of his artists, he has a variety. He's worked with Spectral Motion, Mike Elizalde and Steve Johnson, and all these other great effects artists throughout his career. But there's something about DDT's work out of Spain, the Devil's Backbone as well.
Yeah.
That just gives it just a different vibe to it than someone in LA would do.
Well, and I think you bring up a good point in remembering the importance of the word artist in makeup artist, because you have brought up a couple times now how much of art comes into it, going back to their books and their drawings, their sketches, that it's a piece of art brought to the screen. And in this case, especially with Pan's Labyrinth, we also have to give credit to Doug Jones, because he helps really make that a character, inside that suit.
Yeah, and also in Hellboy too. I mean, he's I feel like, and you would know better than us, but I feel like when you get that to work with, like how does that sometimes, the actor that you're going to be sort of fitting with your designs, how does that affect what you do?
Big time. And you take it for granted because actors will say, I want this role, I want to do this role. Mm-hmm. But when they really step in to do it, they really don't want to do it. They want to be done with it already.
Yeah.
Because being glued in, in a cold, a wet suit and prosthetics with stinky glue on every square inch of your face and performing through that, and it's not easy. Mm-hmm. And Doug is probably the best actor in the world to handle this and be kind throughout the process, because actors can turn really grouchy quickly when you're being poked and prodded all day and they're covered in a fish suit. They want to be the leading man, or and yet they're in prosthetics.
Right. They endure the most, but they're seen the least.
Yeah. So guys like Doug Jones, the best of the best, the guys that work on the Guillermo films the best of the best, and every movie monster that he has created and will create, I'll be first in line for.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
yeah.
Yeah, because it's not just, we've talked about it before with animated films and voice actors. You can't just say the line, I have a nice voice. No, you make a character.
Yeah.
Same way with actors like Doug Jones. It makes an incredible, credible difference.
Yeah. Yeah, he's just remarkable.
And it went to the whole magical world of the movie and how he balances it out with, because like almost all Guillermo del Toro movies, there's a political statement going on here.
Yeah.
And to balance that with the childlike wonder of what all the creatures was amazing.
Yeah, it was. It's an incredible film.
I was at a bar a week ago, literally in a small town, and the bartender, it's just me in the bar, and the bartender's like, obviously movies came up. What do you do? I do special effects. And then he pulls up his shirt and he's got the Pale Man tattooed on his shirt.
Nice.
So example of what we're talking about. This is true
Yeah.
story. A week ago, bartender, whoop, Pale Man. So enough said.
Good stuff. That is number 3 on our list. The Oscar-winning David Marty from 2006 and Pan's Labyrinth. So let's move up to number 2. Another one. Oh, man. If this is number 2, number 1's got to be pretty damn good.
I think
this,
you know.
I know what's number 1
one.
is. From 1986, The Fly.
I'm afraid.
Don't be afraid.
No. Be afraid. Be very afraid.
Help me. Please, help me.
So the story goes, and I hope this is true, the first name mentioned in the end credits of the movie is Chris Walas, and at an early screening, the audience cheered when that name came up, and the producer, Stuart Kornfeld, turned to him and said, "You're getting an Oscar," and indeed he did.
He did. That is incredible. I want to say, so I love David Cronenberg. I love David Cronenberg. Like, he's such in my all-time, he's in my top 3 all-time favorite directors. I love David Cronenberg. And I feel like he owes Chris Walas such a tremendous debt because he did Scanners. And, if it weren't for that head explosion, I don't know how much longer it would have taken Cronenberg to really get traction in the genre. That was such a pivotal moment in horror and certainly in Cronenberg's career. But then he also did Naked Lunch, which is one of my favorites.
Right.
And has so many great creatures all throughout that movie.
Yeah.
So I feel like Walas had a chance to sort of stretch and show more than just sort of one guy's transformation. You had like all these different things to look at in Naked Lunch. But obviously The Fly, what he did, it's such a tender film, really. And you love Jeff Goldblum. You love him, and you want the best for him, which is one of the reasons I think the film is so effective. Is it's going to go badly, and then I just feel like the makeup transformations, the the physical transformation, is such an important. It's such a visceral, like, oh God, no, in how the movie progresses. That there's a great reason it won the Oscar.
Oh, yeah, because it's so horrific on one hand. On the other hand, you have so much sympathy for him. And even though, from what Cronenberg has said, it wasn't intended at the time, because of the time it came out, there was such a analogy to the AIDS epidemic at the time. But really any sort of sickness, any sort of illness where you have to see someone waste away like that and you care for them and love them because, of course, you have this love story going on and she has to watch him, what happens to him. Yeah, it's very, very moving and yet horrific at the same time.
Yeah. I think it strikes a perfect balance. What are your thoughts, House?
Well, I too love David Cronenberg very much, and he's my all-time favorite filmmakers since I was a child. And I love The Fly. I love, I can talk about all of his films, but The Fly, there's such a human element, I think, that makes that movie win. The makeup obviously is throughout the film and it's brilliant, but it's ultimately the human connection that wins. It's Jeff and Gina. It's what a love story, period.
Yeah.
Take away, the same like with The Thing. Most effects guys reference The Thing as the greatest effects movie. But take away the makeup effects in it, and you have a really tight suspense thriller of who done it, who's out there.
Yeah.
Who am I? The Fly, take away all the makeup effects, and you have that relationship of I'm dying. and angry and changing, even if we don't see the metamorphosis happen on screen. It's just that human connection. And that's what makes it so good, is there's such a love story there that I adore. And then, of course, the grossest makeup effects ever. Right. And Jeff sells it. Because that's the other thing. Like, you can get buried in rubber and it like is like a blanket. Or are you going to allow that to like reach out, and you got to go big, and your eyes, and who has better eyes than Jeff?
Yeah.
Right.
So all those mannerisms, and it's so funny and sad, and you can see like the different moods that he has as he's changing. It's such a great film. I mean, and all of these that we're talking about, with the exception of Frankenstein, which I saw revival wise, but I've seen the first time, in the theater. So I was always eager to see every film that we're talking about, when they came out.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. One of the things I think about Goldblum and in The Fly, he's such a dork early on, and he sells that, and it fits the character very well. So there's like sort of social cues that he misses. So when he starts kind of picking at his face, it's different than if like somebody who'd grown up handsome, and he's a handsome man, but if somebody who thought of themselves had any vanity, that's I think what I'm saying, is that he's picking at himself without any vanity. Which
he's fascinated by
Yeah, he
it.
is. Because he's a scientist, and then actually also when when all of a sudden he's like, oh, look at me, I'm hulking and I'm very strong. It's like it's like a kid. He's like, woohoo, look at this, I think his performance it's fascinating to me because it comes from, I think, a very authentic place given who that character was.
Yeah.
And I think it just makes it that much sadder as you see what eventually happens. And then in the end, when he's just oh my God, that just breaks your heart. Just kill me.
Because she has to do it.
She does.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the saddest thing.
You know,
and also the grossest.
And everybody remembers the mirror scene.
Oh,
and
yeah,
of course
yeah.
the how the fly eats. But one that gets forgotten about, and you tell me, House, how hard this is to do. How about the arm wrestling scene?
Yeah.
That's a totally different kind of effect, but boy, it made people squirm for a different reason when that bone comes popping out.
Yeah, it's kind of an easy effect, but the impact of it is very painful.
Yeah.
It absolutely is. And man, yeah, that still hurts.
It does.
It hurts. Oh.
But Cronenberg, I mean, even in Eastern Promises, which is it's a brilliant movie. It's not a horror movie by any stretch of the imagination. It's a great, gritty thriller drama. But there's a scene, and I remember when we went to see it, and every time he made a non-horror movie there for a while, I was just this much disappointed. Like, oh, come on. But it's a great movie. Yeah. It's a brilliant movie. But even in the very beginning, then this pregnant girl comes running into a pharmacy, and I'm like, "There's Cronenberg. There we go." Because there's just this big nasty blood effect. I'm like, "Oh yeah." It's like when you see Peter Jackson do movies that aren't the horror movies. There's usually at least this one scene where you're like, "That's my guy." There you go. Thank you.
Very true.
Well, that is Oscar-winning and well-deserved for 1986. And Chris Walas and The Fly, which moves us up to number one, and you referenced it already, and how could it be anything but? From 1931, Jack Pierce and more iconic makeup with the look of Frankenstein.
This is the story you've heard about. The spine-tingling, blood-chilling story that stuns your emotions. Frankenstein.
Oh, it's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Yes, and that is maybe the godfather of monster makeups, Frankenstein. I was fascinated with that character probably at the age of 3. Famous Monsters magazine. I'd seen all the movies, or I was starting to watch them at that age. And that still to me is, in many ways, the ultimate monster. I was really confused on how they made that head square as a child. That perplexed me. But again, what makes this movie work for me and that character work for me is the acting, the sympathy. It's a real character. I had sympathy for Frankenstein's monster. I wasn't, he still scared the hell out of me, but there was sort of a kindred spirit with it. And still to this day, I've played the monster, tried makeups on myself of various incarnations throughout my life of this monster. And I'm really excited to see a new movie eventually of him. And I have so many toys and pictures and books on this monster. He's still my number one guy. Frankenstein, still is.
Yep.
Maybe because we're both tall and got large foreheads.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I sort of look like I wanted to look like him, and I think eventually I have.
I think
finally come to there.
I think all of us weirdly tall people kind of gravitate toward Frankenstein as a favorite.
Well, it's important to remember how much, because this has just become the go-to look. That's what Frankenstein looks like. But it's so much different than the way his look is described in the novel. I mean, this is all due to Jack Pierce,
right?
His vision of the monster,
and James Whale. He has to have credit too, because the monster really doesn't. Because he doesn't really speak, and of course in the book, it's the whole book is told from the point of view of the monster. He talks a lot, and he's very smart, and so there was a specific choice made. And one of the things I love about it is that I think for horror in general, a lot of times, the monster represents the sort of unlovable outsider, and I think that's why horror is so appealing to a very specific group of people, the people who see themselves as the outsider. And I don't think any film ever, before or since, captures that as sympathetically and empathetically as this Frankenstein. And so much of it, of course, has to do with Whale and with the direction and with the script itself and the way that it veered away from the novel. But Boris Karloff's performance, and it's funny too to have Boris Karloff had such a remarkable voice and way of speaking.
Yeah.
That it's funny to me that his greatest performance is essentially a mute. That's kind of amazing to me, but it's so hard, I think, to create a memorable character that you love, that the audience will love, and you don't get a chance to say anything, to use dialogue to get that across. In my whole life, I have found that concept insanely fascinating and have tried to sort of recreate it in different things I've done. Never to this degree of success, obviously. But then, I think that this makeup is the all-time greatest. That he just created, Jack Pierce created, and he used Karloff and everything that Karloff could sort of bring to it as sort of it seems to me, jumping off point as to how he was going to make this makeup just iconic. And of course, the Bride of Frankenstein, also an icon.
Oh my God.
Like an absolute icon, like the goth goddess that is the Bride of Frankenstein. And those two images together, I think are unparalleled in horror.
And I have to say, as great as Frankenstein's entire look, the monster's entire look is, the chef's kiss is the bolts in the neck. I just love the bolts in the neck.
And those boots are still very popular. They're still hip, Yeah. And of course, he went on. He also did. Oh, The Man Who Laughs. Oh my God, that's makeup. That is. Again,
and directly influential to Joker.
Oh, and so many images are directly refer to that image, The Man Who Laughs, and also the original Wolfman. And the Boris Karloff, The Mummy. I mean, that's all of that makeup is just stunning. But yeah, I think that there is none that matches that concept of Frankenstein.
And it's interesting that the copyright to Universal for this makeup design ends in 2026.
Oh, wow.
So how can we take it?
It's interesting. Jack Pierce's makeups really helped architect Universal Studios.
For sure.
I'm talking about the amusement parks and what we see today even. If you go into Hollywood, you're going to see a mural of Boris Karloff's Frankenstein. I don't care what part of the world you're in, you can recognize Boris Karloff's Frankenstein.
Yes.
That's how important it is. It's as iconic as anything ever.
Yeah. That's exactly the truth.
Symbols in America.
That's exactly the truth. Because if you think
of the greatest characters of all time.
Yep.
And I mean Frankenberry, right? The cartoon cereal, the cereal. It's not based on Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. It's based on Boris Karloff's, right? It's based on Jack Pierce's makeup. And you can always recognize it right away, even though it has nothing to do with Universal, even though it has nothing to do with Mary Shelley. That image, that the bolts and the square head and those shoes, Jack Pierce created that, and that is what all the world thinks of when they think of Frankenstein.
Yes. And there have been other Frankensteins since, and I've enjoyed them.
Mm-hmm.
If I had the keys to Universal Studios and they said, you're creating the new Frankenstein movie, I would go back to the Boris Karloff look as closely as possible.
Yeah.
Period. And yes, and I appreciate all of the designs that we're going to see in the future and that we have seen in the past, and they're maybe more realistic in terms of science or science fiction than what the Karloff Jack Pierce makeup is. I'd want to find an actor who I believe is Jeremy Irons, and I would put him in the Frankenstein makeup.
I like that.
Oh my God, I do like that.
But it ain't happening anytime soon.
No.
We're gonna have a new Frankenstein, and I hope it's fabulous. I do. And I love the Bernie Wrightston Frank. I love the long hair, and I love a very long, thin body.
Mm-hmm.
There's still a new version out there that's going to be really sexy and great, and scary, I hope. So I'm excited.
You mean the new Del Toro, the one that Del Toro's
Yeah, I'm interested to see where he goes with that.
Yeah, me too.
Sure, yeah.
And it's a great looking cast, and people keep debating which of the males they're talking about are going to be the monster. I think it's going to be Doug Jones. I don't think it's going to be.
No.
You don't think it'll be Doug Jones?
Absolutely not.
Ooh.
No.
All right.
No.
Okay.
We shall
It's
see.
it's going to be the kid. What's his name? The British
Garfield?
kid.
Andrew
Yes.
Garfield?
Andrew Garfield, you think so?
Absolutely.
Wow.
And he'll do a good job.
He would do.
Yes, he's going to be fine. He's going to be fine.
He is always good. I mean, he's always good in
I also
everything.
see some CG augmentation coming to make him taller.
Mm-hmm.
So he's in the scene. He's not going to be Andrew Garfield height. He's going to be closer to 7 feet tall.
Yeah, I can see that. Although he's going to be opposite Oscar Isaac, who is not very tall and who is the perfect mad scientist, right? I mean, if you saw Ex Machina, he's the perfect mad scientist.
Cumberbatch was my pick.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I can
Well,
see-
is he in this?
No.
Okay,
No,
because
he
he
said
did
that-
that.
if he-
My Dr.
That'd be
Frankenstein was Cumberbatch.
Because he did it on stage, right?
I believe he did.
Yeah.
He did.
Oh,
And then
yeah.
Jeremy Irons for my monster, but
Oh,
that's
yeah.
my version, and
Right.
it isn't happening.
I love that version.
It sounds like a great version.
I love that version.
So number one, obviously, on our list of makeup effects in horror from 1931, the classic Frankenstein and Jack Pierce's design. This has been fantastic. We've been waiting to do this. We waited too long, but now that it's here, this has been a fantastic conversation. I love it. Looking ahead to next time, we're going to be back at Gateway Film Center for the next Fright Club Live, where you try to do a mea culpa,
Yeah.
where you're bringing more of a crowd pleaser. And actually, this is one that came about because we had that poll asking people what famous horror movies they had seen, and so many people had not seen Session 9, so we're going to make sure they do.
That's right. I was shocked. I was shocked.
One of my all-time favorites.
Yeah, it's a great one. And a crowd pleaser, right? I don't think there will be crickets
Love
that time.
movie. When everyone says, "What's you recommend?" I say Session 9.
Nice.
Well, that's going to be Friday, April 14th.
Yep.
Will be the next Fright Club Live. We're going to show Session 9, and we're going to do a podcast on The Patient.
That's right.
Frightful Patience.
Frightful Patience.
I love that. So, and we've got a bonus Fright Club coming in April with a bonus special guest.
Yeah, Bruce Campbell. We got to talk to Bruce Campbell, and we both talked to him this time because whenever Bruce Campbell says words, I do this. So we needed somebody who would just compose themselves and then do a follow-up question.
Well, he's coming to town. He's coming to Columbus with his Bruce O'Rama half game show, half movie event, and so he's going to talk to us about that. He also tells us what really 2 words in a movie script, when he reads it, tells him the movie is going to be a dog.
Right.
And we'll find out what that is. And, of course, he's always just a very fun and enthusiastic interview.
Yeah,
especially when we find out how you're going to react to it. So that's coming in April. Well, we always love to hear what you think about our choices. We know they're good, but what did we leave out? Let us know. You can always find us on socials at Fright Club Pod on Twitter. Also, the main website is madwolf.com, and you can find us on Facebook and Instagram easily at Mad Wolf Columbus. And House, where can we find you on socials?
David Henson Greathouse on Facebook, and that's about all I'm doing right now.
Yeah.
Well, we can't thank you enough. This has been, to hear from someone like you this is your topic, and we so much appreciate your insight because this has been great.
It has been great. Thank you so much, and it was just great to get to talk to you again.
Yes, I agree.
And coming soon, hopefully to a streaming service or a theater near you, you can catch House's work in Obstacle Corps.
Yeah,
hint, hint.
Hint, hint.
Hopefully we'll have some good news on that soon. But until then, she is Hope Madden.
He's George Wolf.
And this is the Fright Club Podcast. We'll let House take us out.
Stay frightful, my friends.
Yeah.